She offered a stranger shelter from the rain, never imagining he held the keys to the entire city. The rain came suddenly, drumming against the rooftops with a hurried urgency, turning the city streets into a glossy maze of reflections. I was caught in it, the sharp chill seeping through my soaked jacket, the cold rain clinging to my hair and skin like a relentless reminder of how out of place I felt in this sprawling city. I moved quickly, hands shoved deep into my pockets, shoulders hunched against the downpour, trying to find shelter, some sign of warmth in the gray blur of rain and light. Then, through the mist, I saw her. She stood beneath a small awning outside a quaint cafe, her coat pulled tight against the weather, but with an air of calm that somehow softened the harshness of the storm. Her hair, dark and damp at the edges, framed a face that carried a quiet strength, not loud or demanding, but steady and sure, like the steady pulse of the city itself. She noticed me almost immediately, her gaze lingering for a moment with something gentle, almost wary, before she stepped forward. "Come inside," she said, voice low and warm, almost like an invitation to a secret place. I hesitated, the weight of exhaustion and chill heavy on my limbs, but her kindness was like a beacon in the storm. I followed her into the small refuge of the cafe, the bell above the door chiming softly as we stepped inside. The air was warm and smelled faintly of coffee and baked bread, a comfort I hadn't realized I was craving. She moved with effortless grace behind the counter, producing a steaming cup of tea without a word. The warmth of the cup seeped into my fingers as I took it, the heat spreading slowly through my cold skin. I looked up and saw her watching me quietly, a small, knowing smile touching her lips. Her presence was calming, and for the first time in hours, the world outside faded away, the rain still tapping steadily against the windows, but no longer a threat. Her eyes held a mix of curiosity and kindness, as if she was quietly asking, without words, what had brought me here, to this wet and lonely place. I wanted to tell her everything, but the words stuck, lost somewhere between the pounding of the rain and the quiet thrum of something unexpected stirring inside me. She moved closer, offering a simple blanket she'd found draped over a nearby chair. The fabric was soft, and when she wrapped it gently around my shoulders, the touch was brief but sure, like a silent promise of care. Her fingers brushed lightly against my skin, and I felt a sudden warmth, not just from the tea, but from the connection sparked in that small, shared moment. Outside, the city blurred into streaks of light and shadow, but inside that cafe, time slowed. I wasn't a stranger anymore. I was just a man warmed by kindness in the rain, and something more, something I couldn't quite name yet, was beginning to take root. Our next meetings were less accidental and more something I found myself quietly hoping for, though I wouldn't admit it even to myself. She had a way of moving through the city that seemed both purposeful and unhurried, like she belonged to the streets in a way I never quite did. I watched her from a distance at first, the way her coat caught the soft evening light, how her footsteps echoed softly against the pavement, and how her smile seemed to hold stories I longed to hear. One evening, she invited me to join her at the same small cafe, the same corner table where rain had first brought us together. The place was quiet then, the muted clink of cups and hushed murmurs the only soundtrack to our growing conversations. She ordered her usual, a jasmine tea, delicate and fragrant, and I was suddenly aware of how much I wanted to know everything about her world without overstepping the invisible line that separated us. Her stories came gently, like the pages of a well-loved book turning slowly. She spoke of days filled with travel, art, and moments of solitude in parks where the city's noise softened to a whisper. There was a grace in her words, a kind of quiet confidence that told me she had lived fully, loved fiercely, and lost things that still lingered beneath her composed exterior. She didn't flaunt her past, she shared it with honesty, the kind that pulls you closer without forcing you to understand all at once. I listened, sometimes lost for words, because there was an unspoken truth in those stories, the kind that only age and experience can write. It wasn't just the years between us, though that was there, subtle like a shadow at the edge of a warm light. It was the life she carried with her, the soft sadness behind her eyes when she paused mid-sentence, and the way her laughter sometimes faltered, as if she was weighing whether to let me inside her carefully guarded world. Our conversations weren't just words. They were pauses filled with meaning, the brush of her hand against mine when she reached for her cup, the way her eyes held mine a second longer when I said something that touched a chord. I became aware of the spaces between us, the silent dialogue of glances and hesitations that spoke louder than anything we said aloud. One night, as we walked along the riverbank after dinner, the city lights twinkling like distant stars, I caught her hand lightly in mine. The touch was tentative, almost shy, but electric, a bridge spanning the gap between what was and what might be. Her fingers trembled briefly, then tightened just a little, and in that small act, the distance between our worlds seemed to narrow. But still, there was the unspoken question that hung in the air: could two lives so different find common ground? Could I, with my restless uncertainty, be enough for someone who had lived so much and carried so much with her? I didn't have the answers yet. All I knew was that with every shared smile, every soft glance, and every fleeting touch, I was drawn deeper into the quiet mystery of her life, a mystery I was desperate to explore. Even if I didn't yet know what I might find, there was something about him I couldn't quite put my finger on. Beneath the easy kindness he showed me, the small gestures that felt genuine rather than performative, there was a quiet reserve, like a door slightly ajar but never fully open. I found myself watching him in those rare moments when his guard slipped, glimpsing a flicker of something more profound lurking beneath his calm exterior. He never spoke about his life in the city, no matter how gently I tried to draw it out. Instead, he let his actions speak in small, unexpected ways. I noticed how he remembered my favorite tea without me having to say it twice, or how he instinctively handed me my coat when a chill suddenly crept into the evening air. Those gestures weren't grand, but they carried weight, a tenderness wrapped in subtlety that left me wondering what stories he held just beneath the surface. One night, as we sat on a bench overlooking the city skyline, the lights shimmering like stars scattered across the dark canvas, he brushed a stray lock of hair from my face. His fingers lingered just a moment longer than necessary, tracing the curve of my cheekbone with a softness that made my breath hitch. The city buzzed around us, but in that moment, it felt as if time slowed, the distant hum fading into the background as the space between us tightened. There was an unspoken invitation in his eyes, a silent conversation carried through a glance, a pause. I wanted to reach out, to close that gap, but I hesitated. The distance between us wasn't just measured in years but in the worlds we inhabited. Yet, in those small touches and stolen glances, I sensed a bridge forming, delicate, fragile, but real. Sometimes, when he thought I wasn't looking, his gaze would drift to the skyline beyond us, a hint of something almost wistful. I wondered what he saw in those distant towers and lights. Power? Isolation? A dream he wasn't quite ready to share. He carried himself with a quiet confidence, but there were moments when the mask slipped, revealing a vulnerability I hadn't expected. Like the night he paused mid-sentence, eyes clouding for just a heartbeat before clearing, or the way his voice softened when he spoke about the city's hidden corners, places where he found solace from the relentless demands of his life. The rain had softened to a gentle drizzle when he unexpectedly took my hand, fingers curling around mine with a gentle strength. It was a simple touch, but it spoke volumes, a promise of presence, of patience. I felt a flutter in my chest, a warmth spreading beneath my skin that had little to do with the weather. Yet, beneath the growing warmth, a quiet tension lingered. He remained a stranger in many ways, a mystery I was drawn to but wary of unraveling too quickly. The life he led was a world apart from mine, cloaked in silence and shadow. But something told me that beneath the surface, there was more than just a city to discover. In that moment, under the soft glow of streetlights and the whisper of falling rain, I realized that what I felt wasn't just admiration, it was the beginning of something fragile and unspoken, a connection threading between us, waiting patiently to be named. There was a weight hanging between us now, heavier than the rain that had first brought us together. It wasn't just the difference in our years, though that quietly lingered in the edges of every conversation. It was the worlds we carried, separate, complex, and not easily bridged. He had always been careful with what he revealed about himself. I knew there was more behind his quiet eyes and gentle gestures, a life shaped by ambition and power that he kept locked away, as if sharing it would somehow break the fragile connection growing between us. I caught glimpses of it in fleeting moments, the way his phone buzzed with urgent messages, the sudden distant look when the city's noise crept in, and the subtle tension that stiffened his posture when we passed by grand buildings that seemed almost to bow under his unseen influence. For my part, I was no stranger to the quiet strength it took to walk through life alone, carrying my own scars and doubts. Yet, being with him stirred a new kind of uncertainty. Could he see me as I truly was? Would my world, simpler, quieter, ever feel like enough? The age gap wasn't just a number, it was the sum of different dreams, different fears. One evening, we found ourselves sitting side by side on a bench overlooking the city park. The autumn air was crisp, leaves rustling softly around us. He reached out, brushing a stray leaf from my hair, his fingers lingering for a heartbeat too long, then pulling back as if afraid of crossing an invisible line. I wanted to tell him that he didn't have to hide, that I saw more than just the surface. But the words got caught in my throat. "I don't want to burden you," he said quietly, his voice low but edged with something raw. "My world, it's not easy. There are expectations, responsibilities. Sometimes I wonder if I'm enough for you, or if this is just a momentary escape." His honesty cracked something open in me. I reached out, resting my hand over his, the warmth grounding us both. "You're more than enough," I whispered. "And I don't expect perfection. Just, you." The tension between us softened, but it didn't disappear. There were still silent questions hanging in the air. What did the future hold? Could our worlds truly collide without one overshadowing the other? I noticed how he flinched slightly when I mentioned friends who might judge the age difference, or when a passerby glanced our way with something unreadable in their eyes. At times, I felt like I was standing on a precipice, looking down into the unknown. His life was a fortress, impressive, intimidating, but guarded fiercely. And yet, when he looked at me, there was a vulnerability, a longing to be seen without armor. That night, as we walked slowly beneath the amber glow of streetlights, the city's hum softened around us. The rain had returned, a gentle drizzle that kissed our skin and blurred the edges of the world. I slipped my hand into his, our fingers entwining naturally, a quiet declaration against the uncertainties that surrounded us. It was a fragile moment, full of hesitation and hope. Two people from different worlds, trying to find a place where their hearts could meet without fear, a place that might, just might, become home. The moment came softly, without fanfare or drama, but it changed everything between us. We were sitting in that quiet cafe again, the one where the rain had first brought us together, a place that felt like a small sanctuary amid the city's endless noise. The light from the antique lamp overhead cast a warm, golden glow over her face, revealing the fine lines of laughter and thoughtfulness that made her beautiful in a way I could never forget. I had been wrestling with the secret for days, the truth about who I really was, the life I had kept hidden behind a carefully maintained mask of modesty and restraint. Owning the city wasn't just a metaphor, it was real. The sprawling empire of businesses, buildings, and influence I had built wasn't something I wore on my sleeve. I had feared that revealing this world to her might shatter the delicate connection we'd formed, turn her kindness into distance. But tonight, the weight of silence pressed too hard, and I needed her to know. I took a breath, feeling the warmth of her gaze steadying me, and spoke quietly, "There's something I haven't told you, something I thought might change the way you see me." Her eyes searched mine, patient and unjudging. I told her about the offices that bore my name in the gleaming towers she sometimes admired from a distance, about the decisions that shaped the city's skyline, and the loneliness that came with it. The power, the influence, it was both a crown and a cage. For a moment, the world outside stopped. Her expression softened in ways I hadn't expected, not with surprise or fear, but with a deep, quiet understanding. Instead of pulling away, she reached out, her fingers brushing lightly over mine, a touch that said more than words ever could. "I don't care about the empire," she whispered. "I care about you, the man who shared his umbrella with a stranger, who's been kind without asking for anything in return." Her words were a balm to the doubts that had gnawed at me. In that small, shared moment, I realized she saw me not as the sum of my possessions or power, but as someone worthy of affection and trust. The city beyond the cafe windows glittered in the night, a sea of lights that suddenly felt less imposing, less cold. I no longer needed to hide behind the fortress I'd built. Her acceptance broke down the walls I'd thought were necessary to protect myself. We sat close then, the space between us filled with warmth and quiet promises. Her head rested lightly against my shoulder, the steady rhythm of her breath syncing with mine. The world felt full, not with grand gestures or declarations, but with something infinitely more precious, honesty, vulnerability, and the beginning of something real. That night, the rain returned, gentle and persistent, but inside, I felt a calm I hadn't known in years. For the first time, I wasn't just the man who owned the city. I was simply the man who had found someone willing to see him as he truly was. The days that followed the reveal felt different, quieter, somehow, but also fuller. The walls between us weren't just coming down, they were being replaced by something softer and more enduring. We were no longer two strangers sharing brief moments in the rain, but two people beginning to weave their lives together, thread by delicate thread. He was no longer just the man who owned the city's skyline, he was the man who sat across from me at our favorite cafe, fingers gently tapping the rim of his cup as he listened to my stories with quiet patience. There was a new warmth in his eyes now, one that went beyond curiosity or admiration. It was a look that said, "I'm here. I'm yours, if you want me." Our conversations grew deeper, peeling back the layers we had both carefully guarded. I shared fears I rarely spoke aloud, the loneliness that sometimes settled in quiet moments, the silent ache of dreams deferred. And he listened, really listened, his gaze never wavering, as if holding those fragile parts of me safe. One afternoon, as sunlight streamed through the cafe windows, he reached across the table and brushed a loose strand of hair behind my ear. The touch was so gentle, so tender, it sent a flutter through my chest. Our eyes met, and in that instant, the years between us felt like nothing more than numbers on a page. We began to share moments beyond words. A hand resting lightly on my back as we walked through the city's winding streets, a quiet embrace when the world felt overwhelming, the softness of his voice in the dark, sharing dreams he had never dared to say aloud. Those simple acts built a language of their own, one of trust, respect, and unspoken promises. There were still moments of hesitation, of course. The outside world's judgments lingered in the corners of my mind, and sometimes I caught him stealing wary glances when people mentioned our age difference or raised eyebrows followed us down the street. But in those times, we held tighter to each other, a silent reassurance that what we were building was stronger than any doubt. One evening, as we sat side by side on a park bench, the city's lights shimmering around us like distant stars, he took my hand in his again. This time, there was no hesitation, just steady, warm strength. His thumb traced slow circles on my palm, and I leaned into him, letting the steady beat of his heart calm my restless thoughts. In that moment, the gap between our worlds seemed to shrink until it disappeared entirely. It wasn't about age, or power, or the expectations that once felt so daunting. It was about two people choosing to be present for each other, opening their hearts despite the risks. I realized then that love isn't about erasing differences, it's about honoring them, embracing the fullness of who we are, and finding beauty in the spaces where our lives overlap. As the city hummed softly around us, I felt a quiet joy settle deep inside. We were no longer separate paths crossing briefly in the rain. We were a shared journey, unfolding slowly, beautifully, with all the tenderness and promise of a love that had been worth waiting for. The rain had started again that evening, soft at first, like a whisper against the city's concrete, then gradually growing into a steady, soothing rhythm. But this time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like a blessing, a quiet symphony that wrapped around us as we walked side by side through the familiar streets, hand in hand. The city, which once felt so vast and overwhelming, now seemed smaller, more intimate. The glow of streetlights reflected in puddles on the pavement, casting shimmering patterns that danced beneath our feet. The cool droplets kissed our skin, mingling with the warmth radiating from the simple touch of our intertwined fingers. Each step we took was steady, unhurried, like we were moving not just through the city, but into something new, something shared. Her head rested lightly against my shoulder, her breath soft and steady. I could feel the quiet steadiness of her heartbeat beneath her chest, a rhythm that felt like home. The world around us, the bustling noise, the flashing signs, the watchful eyes, melted away, leaving only the steady beat of our connection, strong and sure. We didn't need words in that moment. The lingering glances, the gentle squeezes of our hands, and the warmth of her presence said everything. The hesitation and uncertainty that had once clouded our steps had softened, replaced by a quiet confidence in what we had built together. Our age difference, once a silent question hanging between us, now felt like a thread woven into the tapestry of our story, a reminder of the different paths that had brought us here, but never a barrier. Instead, it was a testament to the unexpectedness of love, to the way hearts can find each other beyond time, beyond judgment. As we turned a corner, the rain briefly ceased, revealing the city skyline glittering against the night sky. I looked down at her, catching the soft smile playing on her lips, the gentle light in her eyes that spoke of hope and belonging. "We made it," I whispered, my voice low but full of meaning. She squeezed my hand in return, a silent promise that whatever the future held, we would face it together. In the months that followed, the city became our shared canvas, a place where two worlds intertwined, where laughter filled quiet cafes and long walks under rainy skies. We found joy in the small moments, the brush of her hand against mine in crowded rooms, the way her eyes lit up when she spoke of dreams we now dared to dream together, the simple comfort of knowing we had each other. We weren't perfect. There were still moments of doubt, of awkward glances or whispered worries. But those were just threads in a richer fabric, a fabric strengthened by trust, respect, and the deep affection that grew between us. Looking back, I realized that Night in the Rain was more than chance. It was a beginning, the start of a story neither of us could have predicted, but one we chose to write, day by day, hand in hand. And as the rain falls softly once again, I know that no matter what storms come, we will face them together, two souls bound not by circumstance, but by a love that refuses to let go.